Yeah, so the Recruitment Junction, for those of you that don't know, we've been going exactly a year, had our first birthday last week, the first of our kind in the Northeast, not-for-profit recruitment agency, and I'll talk more about this, but we have a mix of charitable funding through the the lottery, and then and we are commissioned by the likes of DWP, Police and Crime Commissioner, etc. We're the happiest to announce that we've placed 75 people so far in year one into paid work, so sustainable paid work. Sustainable except for the chap who walked out this morning, but we'll gloss over him. That's a shame, but still 90% job retention rates for the people that we have placed into work, which is higher than the public national average, so that's great. And only 3 people who have reoffended, no, not 3 people, 2 people who have reoffended, 3%, which, as we all know, that's way, way lower than the national average. And one of those lads who reoffended, the employer, with our encouragement, kept his job open, wrote a letter to the magistrates asking for clemency, got his job back, took him back, and I was speaking to him yesterday. He's going great guns. So that's a success by every measure, I hope. There's me with some food parcels outside Waitrose. I don't know why we put that one on there. That's Andrew with his asbestos mask. Next slide, please. Oh, there's me again. Yes, so my background is 25 years in recruitment. The first 15 years was commercial recruitment. So initially I worked for Office Angels on Regent Street. I then took over the management of Office Angels in Richmond. And I then set up my own commercial recruitment agency on the continent, placing IT professionals. Sold that nearly 10 years ago when we were turning over £10 million. Acrimonious sale to an unpleasant business partner, but such is life, and it's a long time ago. And you know, I exited well, and I consider that you know, that was my first life, as it were. Moved into the ex-offender sphere. First 3 years of that in London, of which most with Working Chance. I was the second person to join Jocelyn Hillman, as was. They are still the only recruitment agency for female ex-offenders. Did a couple of other bits and bobs in London. Then we moved up here to Newcastle 7 years ago. Next slide, please. Yes, it's a Christian organisation in terms of our ethos and foundation. Some of us are Christian, some of us are not, open to everybody, but I hope with a good ethic and ethos, and really that desire to see people realise their full potential, their God-given or their innate potential. As we'll know, work reduces reoffending by up to a half, less crime, fewer victims of crime. The big thing for us, and I'll talk about this in a minute, is seeing the generational impact on people and their families. And yes, as Jane Timpson says, of course, it makes good business sense. Yes, so all quite obvious, but good stuff. Next slide, please. Some of the clients that we're dealing with, Green King, we love them. Big employer of people with prior convictions, placed 6 people with them since we started working with them in May, June time. Addiston, that's a local property developer construction firm who were the employer that wrote to the magistrates on behalf of our lads, who have never knowingly, I mean they certainly have unknowingly, but have never knowingly worked with people with prior convictions up until now. So that's been great. Next slide, please. I'm whipping through some of the early stuff because some of this is more well known. Yes, we are an alternative recruitment partner. Yes, reliable candidates. We meet everyone several times face to face over a number of months. So I say that we are a recruitment agency, but having worked on both sides of the fence, the commercial salesy world where there's a price on everybody's head, and we were interested in creaming off the creme de la crop and whittling people out. This is obviously the reverse of that. And so we take our time and we support people, to get to that point of full work readiness. But also we then get to know them much more than you might choose to in a normal recruitment process. We want to know the warts and all so that we can support them through those warts and out the other side. And we operate on the basis, of course, of a full disclosure during the hiring process, even where legally, where Ruth was talking before, that, candidates might not need to disclose a conviction, we would advise that they be prepared to disclose, because employers will ask when they shouldn't, first and foremost, and because Google is an amazing and an evil thing, and people will Google people, and nothing worse than being bitten on the bum when you've started, because people find out about an online profile and somebody takes against it, or what have you. So we prepare people to just tell their story and to explain what was going on then, what's changed now, why things are different, and to own their version of events, which is their truth, isn't it? Yes, as I said, 90% job retention rates, and of course for employers, you know, it's ticking all their CSR boxes. There's real good people stories. A couple of you talked about seeing me on LinkedIn, and that's my main thing really, is talking about the hope that there is in what we do, and I'll come on to that more shortly. Next slide, please. I hope I am not Chris Whitty. That one, yes, right. So this is where I'm supposed to impart my wisdom. So landing your vision, I think it is really important that you know what your purpose to do, and you know what you are setting out to do. And it's not always as obvious as it might seem, or sometimes it's too big, or it's too vague, or it's not fully nailed. And I would encourage everybody to take real time over that, to understand what the vision is. For us, the two key things in our vision statement are that we exist to enable people to discover or rediscover a sense of purpose through work, and we believe that we will see generational impact through the work that we do over people's lives and over their families. And that's really what massively excites me. And slightly more as a byproduct, and some employers, well, you know, people will feel that this is the main deal, and if this happens, we will deliver on skills shortages in the local marketplace, and we will contribute to reducing regional unemployment as a consequence, and we will, as a byproduct, see reoffending reduced massively. I put that at the bottom of my list because that doesn't excite me, because that will happen. It's a natural consequence and a given of what we will achieve through placing people into work. But my why, and that's a good thing, of course it's a good thing that that offending is reduced, that there are fewer victims of crime, and that the individual stops keep going in and out of prison. But my key thing of my vision is that people would get that sense of purpose through work, and that their families and their children would be impacted. So being able to articulate what the need is that you're meeting and what your offer is. So for us, the need is very clear. There are people with past convictions sat on the scrap heap who could very easily be in work. And there are lots of jobs available and employers who will take them. So we exist to match those two. So the need is jobs for people with convictions and people in the workplace, because we have all these vacancies, even in a time of pandemic, even in a time of recession, even in a time of COVID. You know, in all of that, there were many job vacancies. So yes, I can articulate that in a sentence. That was several sentences, but it clearly can be. And breaking the vision down into, you know, bite-sized, tangible tasks and targets. So when I was setting up the Recruitment Junction, well, brainstorming about the Recruitment Junction really still when I was still with my previous charity in the first lockdown, and I was furloughed. And besides running around to the food bank and delivering to people in the community, hence that photograph, I was, you know, trying to cast vision really for what this would be, and broke it down. And for me, coming from my faith-based perspective, I called these faith goals really. And yeah, and I suppose you kind of prayed over them and prayed them in, but they are business goals. And so I wanted to see that we would make a certain number of placements. I was looking back over all of this just on Monday gone as we celebrated our first birthday, and I had predicted and hoped for 24 placements. So we got 74 by the end of the calendar year. So that was hysterical as to how far out I was, but in a good way. I had hoped for a turnover of 125,000 over 12 months. We closed our financial year early at 9 months, and we were quite a bit in excess of that. I wanted us to be commissioned by statutory commissioning bodies in this sector to not only be charitably funded, and I wanted that to happen in year one. And I had written down I wanted us to be commissioned by the police, by probation, by DWP, by the local authority, by somebody else who also commissioned us. Anyway, they all commissioned us, bar the High Sheriff of Northumberland. So they're still on my hit list, but that might not be the biggest money spinner. So it's been great to have obtained these commissions, because these public bodies, of course, should be paying for this work. It should not only be charitably funded, and who should also be paying is the employers. And that's my year 2 and my year 3 goal, that if they're going to pay another recruitment agency to get their HGV driver that they can't hire, and I have recruited somebody with more care and more support, they can pay us for our sustainability, as has been spoken about a lot. So yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I love it. I love the passion. We are on a little bit of a time scale, so if I can.
Right, go on then. Next slide.
So sorry about that. I don't like to.
No, that's right. No, it's all right. Thought it was going quick. Okay, we talked about this a bit. So knowing your field. I don't think there's any competitors. I don't think you need to think of it in those terms. For me, we rise by lifting others. You need to know what your peers are doing. You need to know what your partners are doing. You need to be speaking to them. You need to be in all of these forums, fora, and industry events, and get known and be known and find out and talk and all of that. And you need to know who your potential funders and who your potential financiers are. So I literally, drew up my long list of all the people I could find in our sector. I then went to the Charity Commission website, or to Companies House, or whichever, and went through their annual report and saw who had funded them, and drew up an enormous list of who they were getting their money from. And that's been my hit list on the charitable funding side. Next slide. And to discover your cheerleaders, LinkedIn has been this absolute revelation to me of goodwill. All of you guys here that I've met through LinkedIn, and people who will amplify your work because they buy into it through the connection of a people's stories. So I aim very much to give the stories of hope and of triumph and of small wins and big wins and everything in between. The occasional rant that I will post is when I really feel there is some massive injustice on an individual level. What I'm not ranting about is rates of reoffending and cost of reoffending and the taxpayer and this, because that's just boring and tedious. And there's enough people lobbying. I'm not a lobbyist. I want to connect through the story of so much good stuff that is happening and so many lives transformed. So yes, last slide is a bit of a rant. Pitfalls, beware my pitfalls. The funding, we had commissioned funders who promised by a certain date. They didn't deliver for significant months, and that was interesting. They also are supposed to refer people to me, and didn't for a whole summer from June to September. So we drew people from other sources, but that was unexpected. As soon as they wanted to pay for it, had commissioned me for it, and then didn't send the people. So that was a challenge of a new team. We're a new organisation, so of course my team is new, and there they all are, but there's nobody on that picture apart from me that has more than 3 months experience going down. And that is a challenge for me, to be the expert in the room all the time. Beverley, what should I do here? Beverley. It's like when your kids are little, mummy, you want to change your name sometimes. But of course I want to impart my learning. But it's harder than I had anticipated to have everybody new and everybody learning. And that mental overwhelm and the sadness of the stories that we hear. So I've put stuff in place. We have a team group clinical supervision every 6 to 8 weeks. That's good. I have a business coach. That's good. Our chair of trustees makes me sit with him once a month. That's good. I kind of still feel it's not enough, and the work life is in imbalance. So that is something for me to have constant attention to, and which I wish you more success at than I have achieved. But it's only been a year. I can get better. The end.
Thanks, Bev. Thanks.